There are two cinematic gold standards to which I personally hold all other films. The first is 2001, and the second John Ford's masterpiece, The Searchers. And yes, I know what you're thinking. Stanley Kubrick and John Ford couldn't be further apart stylistically, and while this is true in their characterizations and themes, their execution could be described as remarkably similar. Both men were unpredictable and often manipulated actors for on-screen effect. Both relished the ability to build, enhance, and capture human interaction. Whether this means a medium shot reverse shot or a wide panoramic painting of some settlers. Since both were geniuses, the only thing distancing their bodies of work is ideology. To quote Mr. Tarantino,
the Western has always been a really interesting genre, and I think there's no other genre that reflects the decade in which it was made more than the Westerns made during a particular decade. They reflected an Eisenhower ideal of America. They reflected a perceived American exceptionalism. All right, having won the World War II, and even the prosperity of America at that time.
It's inevitable that most artists leave behind an artifact or a part of themselves in their work, and this shows particularly in the case of Christopher Nolan's Interstellar. Much like the classical era of cinema that it embraces, Interstellar offers a reprieve from the cynicism of postmodern consumerist America while carrying the enormous burden of being compared to 2001. And while this isn't an unfair comparison given Nolan's openness about his own inspiration from the film, the two stories fork off into very different conclusions, namely the return to form of the optimism found in cinema from the 50s and 60s.
It's like we've forgotten who we are now. Explorers, pioneers, not caretakers.
When I was a kid, it felt like they made something new every day. Some gadget or idea, like every day was Christmas.
There's a definite theme that governs the setup to the expedition and Cooper's piloting the Endurance, and that is nostalgia. A Dust Bowl timeline that harkens back to the formative years of a nation before we depleted our resources. Interestingly, these two eras collide in the first act, and what Nolan seems to divvy out in sentiment, he withdraws in character, superimposing a litany of philosophical hints over his story. Where Interstellar holds my interest, and where I think it succeeds, is the unabashed way in which it sacrifices its hero. Not to death, but to time. The simultaneous death and rebirth of the Frontiersman caught on film as an audience, and a generation gasps for air and for an ideal once strived for. We were born of the stars, and now we must seek out a new home.